here, let us continue with the material. We are reaching the end of the text material, and in many ways I have covered most of the information I wanted to share here in different variations and in different ways and forms. But we are on page 2, where we're going to talk about the implications for us, and we have touched ground with this, and we do know that science will not agree on these ideas. Of course not, because we can either say, well, I'm completely off and I'm misinterpreting everything, or we could say, well, science has not gotten there yet. So I'm not going to say, well, what I'm saying is the truth. You know that, but I do say, and I do put it into the context of quite a lot of the information I got over the years has not been far off. But let me remind you that back in 2011, I was working with a pole shift. And then it turned out that that was delayed, and that was pushed into a different configuration. And then we had the 2017 two galactic cores, black holes that melted together, and that changed things for us here and connected us to the third cycle system in a new way that technically is preventing the pole shift as we normally understand it, but instead it is now going in and reconfiguring our entire solar system into being a density 1 system that is more in alignment with the settings it had in the previous universal cycle. So this is in a way pushing us back in time to a configuration that many of us have moved beyond, and I think that's a little bit why in the relooping I got that reconnection to the version of me in the Andromeda system, because that, or it could be an earlier version of our planet, or it could be both. It could be that that version of our planet were part of the Andromedan system. We don't know these things, and we're not to put our hat on a specific shelf and say, that's it, and put it in a box and then label it and keep it there, because when we work with past timelines and past memories, it's never really where it was, as in asking you, try to remember when you were in your childhood home. Did you know where you were? Did you know the name of the city? Did it mean anything to you? As in kind of, yeah, you could probably in regression or under hypnosis go in and get the answer, but only if you knew it. And if you didn't think of it, then if it wasn't important to you, then you wouldn't know it, because you would be in where you were in that environment. That was your home, and that's all that matters. So again, when we talk about, well, is it the past, or is it the Ice Age, or is it the future, or is it the Andromedan system, is the previous universal cycle, or what is it? Doesn't matter. What do I experience there is more important, and what does it do to my energy system is more important than classifications. Always remember that. And that's part of the implications for us, because I covered the basis of the molecular changes, and we had a partial solar eclipse here in Denmark today. It is today, October 25th. 30% of the sun was covered by the moon, because the moon came in between. And yesterday evening, let me put it this way, I was out, I had to put something in the bin, and for a first time in a very, very long time, I felt fear of being out. I felt the energies of things out there that I hadn't felt since I was a kid. And when I came back in, I could see there was this dark clouds in my field that were floating around in the night energies, which are, from my perspective, and I could see it in some of my plants today, third cycle energies that are now amping up, and they are creating that sense of fear, because these in clusters are from a system that had not fear, but what we could say were part of very aggressive entities. And my system responds with it, with fear, telling me there's danger. So therefore I feel fears, I feel entities. There's a new type of danger you're not aware of, so therefore you feel fear. So with that, that's a warning signal that we have in our limbic system. So that's what it is. It's not because it is fear-based, but it's because it holds energies that my system does not recognize yet. And it did something to my biofield at the same time, because this is all about the biofield. I would say the largest implications now are on the biofield. Yes, we still have remnant fourth cycle energies and LPF2s and regress races and colonizing races and what have you, and all grays that are connected to these harvesting programs under the scavengers and what have you, whatever's left. And they're still coming in. They are also roaming around and are trying to lower my vibrational field into being connected to shitty perverted levels of our system, so that in that manner I'm not able to reach up and get into the fifth cycle. So that's a dynamic to keep me in circulation within their fields. And that's also why I'm in many ways are just pulling myself out of all connection with as many people as possible, having as little contact as possible, because now this is the time where I need to reconfigure my biosystem, and I can't have old fourth cycle entities, low level perverted stuff come into my vibrational field because of other people or because of being in contact with other people that have not cleared out these levels but are still being sucked dry but unaware because they have not gone through their personality matrix and have cleared it out, and the elemental and the prohibiting technology is still in the way. So hence also the choice I've made to say, well, from here on, as long as I'm not completely solidified and strongly positioned in the fifth cycle, I will keep myself a little bit isolated until I know what I'm dealing with. And even if it is possible, if it's not possible, then at least I know, well, I tried, I did my very best, I did what I had to do to get there, but it's not possible. So I'll deal with what is, and then I'll handle this accordingly. But it has to be given a chance, right? So with this configuration of the older version of me, that's the biofield. And the important thing is the version, whether it's true or not, the idea of the information there is that there is no emotional field. So I've been working on that today. I'm always trying to dismantle what's left of my emotional field. It's quite difficult because it's part of the proton layer. It's part of the atomic construction of our body. So in that manner, when we talk about the molecular shift that I need to do, and I don't know how long it's going to take, it's not going to do one type of energy work and then I realize that this is it and then it's done. Never is. But the beginning process of it, saying, okay, I need to get rid of the proton layers inside of me. I need to get rid of the electrons, and I need to get to the point zero field. Then I need to transfigure that one and get back to the original configuration, either of the Andromedan system or the previous version of me that were functional and were capable of transforming energy in density 1 energies. So that is a bit of a journey there, and it is a complete shift of my molecular structure. So this is, in a way, going backwards. And going backwards, then my system begins to, well, what do you then want to have? What kind of configuration do you then want to have in the fifth cycle? And I already work with some of the older versions of the female Syrian fifth cycle version. I'm here talking about progressive humans from the Syrian system and how these humans were configured. And that is probably the closest I get to something, but that was still inside this universal structure. And I kind of need something that can withstand the challenges of the previous one, because this is, if I'm right on these inclusions that are coming, including when the moon got in between the sun and our planet, that means that if the sun is shining density 1 energies and radiating that, then the moon will be hit with that energy as well. And I'm pretty sure that is going to spark some very old levels alive on the moon, which will eventually also ripple into our planet, because our planet and the moon are made of the same type of material. So we are having these interconnectedness with the fields that are going to shift and are going to change. And that will also change the microbiology, sorry about that, the microscopic level of our physicality. And all of these lowest levels of features of our physicality, technically your body is composed of trillions of little entities. That's what the Bailey material calls the lunar petries. The remnants of whatever has been here beforehand will come to life, and that will create different levels of issues in our biological form. And I think that's why my body is hurting when the sun is shining. It has been cloudy a couple of days, which has been nice. But just even though it's cloudy most of the day, the moment the sun kicks in, then I have to crawl into the kitchen and hide myself there, feeling like, as I said, kind of vampire, right? I can't, the sunlight is just not going well with my body right now. Not until I've done that reconfiguration, shifting it back to the third cycle type of energies. And with that, of course, also the dangers of what went wrong in the third cycle and what we were trying to shy away from in the third cycle. And I might discover that that's a bad idea to go back there, to go into the fifth cycle. Perhaps that is what certain factions within the dark forces want me to do, and then they have put that into my field. That's always the danger with working with what we get. We never really know if it's something of our own demise or device that has come from our own device, or it's something that's put in and will lead to our demise from the different factions. And this is where we need to, okay, I kind of have a sense of who and what I am, but they can use that. They can manipulate these memories. They can take portions of me and connect me to that. And today I was just dealing with the Grace presented a corpse of that female, which means that that female were put in stasis as part of a craft. So that could be the Andromedan system. That could be when I went to exile. There's a lot of unanswered questions that need to be looked at and worked with. And I'm just doing it step by step, unraveling it as it presents itself, going into my organs, going into whatever's connected there. It could also just be that they have connected me to that corpse to prevent me from getting into the fifth cycle. And as I'm struggling with the memories of the corpse that has been lodged in and connected holographically, there is a kind of holographic energy system that's been put into my energy system, a transfer of that holographic energy system that is part of that corpse. Then I will be connected to it because I got the holographic energy system of that female that is in stasis, that is a corpse, right? So the first step is, of course, to delete the corpse and then see if the energy system collapses, and then if the memories fade away, the cubes, whatever, and what have you. And if that's the case, well, then it's a link up, an artificial link up to make me do something that they wanted me to do. So that's also part of clearing out and get rid of whatever. If that's the case, well, then I have to get rid of the labs and everything where the corpse was, whether it's on a craft or whatever it is. Then I have to take that one out. Whether or not it actually takes it out in the true reality of the holographic world doesn't matter, but I show by my actions in the holographic visions that I'm getting that I'm not consenting, that I'm not okay with it, that I clear what I can see, so I remove the code systems. This is what we need to understand. Yes, we clear it in our field, does not mean that we clear it in quote unquote reality, but we clear the code systems, the technology, everything that's in our field, and are by that giving whatever that is access to our field. So we need to clear it as it should be cleared on all levels, which includes the blasting of the craft and the grays and the technologies and everything that's on board, and the cube and the programs and the silos and all of these things that goes with that. So we are in for new challenges because these new energies means that either we are activated by older versions of races that have been here that are holographically represented in the holographic network of our reality as part of the timeline work. It could be incoming races because of the shift of energy of our system, opening up other gate systems, allowing them to come in. It could be that we do connect to the Andromedan system, but an older version of it because, for instance, we know our galaxy and M31 are connected, so that could open up because that older version of Andromeda is a density 1. It could mean our entire universal structure is now reverting back into density 1. There's a lot of questions there that must be investigated, but the core essence of it is that when we do talk about the biofield, that is density 1. So that is connected to the biofield. So it is activation of whatever is hidden in our biofield, whether it's real or inserted or ours or not ours. We work with it no matter what. We clear it. We deal with it as if it were, because it's there and it doesn't go away until we have dealt with it. It is an activation of some sort, either induced into us, imprinted into us, put into us, or is actually part of our own biofield. Either way, we need to deal with it. If we don't deal with it, if we say, that's not mine, well, then you have got a species that have access to you. Similar with the regress races, they are trying to keep me stuck in the fourth cycle and what's left of density 2 in this now highly perverted environment and all the timelines that are connected to density 2. And we're seeing an interesting move around the world, which I think should be put in here. It would be odd not to. But we, or the Britons, have got a new prime minister because the Liz Truss, whatever her name was, she was only there for 45 days. And then it all crashed around her. And now Rishi Sunak, the Indian second generation native Indian from India, his parents were from India coming to England, have come in rulership. And that's colonizing races, absolutely no doubt about it, but the higher end of it. The interesting thing is that we now, prior to, we used to have, so to speak, when we had Boris and Morrison in Australia and Trump in America, we had this Baal scavenger type of people in position and leader position. Now we all have what is technically called the colonizing races. We have Biden in America, insectoid avian. We have now got whatever he is, Mr. Rishi Sunak in Britain. And then we have got Albanese, I think it's called, down in Australia, which is also some kind of colonizing races. So everything has swapped around. That is now focused on the fourth cycle and trying to preserve that whatever they can, making their last attempt to regain the old world order structure, or whether or not they will succeed. And the other thing that's interesting about that one is that Mr. Sunak there, or Rishi Sunak, I'm mostly noticing the word Rishi because, you know, that's kind of, we got the solar rishis, right? It means a sage, someone who is knowledgeable and learned in the true sciences of our reality. That's what the Rishi technically is in Hindu terminology. But either way, the point being is that first and foremost, that there is this whole... there are many different levels of that one. Let me just say it resembles the dynamics we saw when Obama came into power. That's where the ones that were enslaved got their spokesperson in the highest position of the state. And we are now having, you know, Britain had colonies in India, and now they are having their go with one of their own, so to speak, not to create any clash war or group wars or what you call it, class differences or whatever, because it's still of the rich bulk of the colonizing races anyway. So either way, this is kind of closing up a chapter of the ones that were enslaved will now rise into power, so to speak, and ending that cycle. So that's also part of it. A little bit similar to you had in America. You could say, well, what's difference with Biden? Biden is that he's Catholic, and that the last president that was JFK. So what's going on there? And seeing things in their cyclic, the law of the cycles features, and not as much within what we call normal political perception of, yeah, this is just what it is. It has a larger meaning that is also playing in. So back to page 2, in order to grasp these higher order sciences, and no, it's not higher order thinking theory, but the advanced sciences of the higher order realities beyond our present day concepts of reality. And I'm saying that because I think you should look up on Wikipedia higher order thinking theory. You will see what that is. And that is something that is being played with. And that's not what we're dealing with here. We are to reflect on the concepts of field interconnectedness and how changes in one field affect the similar components of the other fields. We are talking interaffectability by fields and via code systems. And this is what is important, because what are the ripple effects of that? We now suddenly have three prime ministers, let's just call them that, one president, two prime ministers, that are of the old world order origin, that are part of these groups. What does that give of ramifications into the fields of governance in our reality? Is that shift, is that part of the relooping that we are kind of being brought back to where that was before the period of the scavengers in power with Trump and Morrison and Borison, sorry, Johnson, right? So you kind of have that understanding, unraveling that one, shifting us into another timeline. Or what is going on? What's the idea with that one? What would be the outcome of it? Including that Albanese have joined forces with the Japanese, and they are now creating a stronger alliance in terms of creating a front towards China, which at the same time, which I all have said for a long time, are now secluding themselves completely. They have rechosen their emperor, as I said they would. And he is now in power, and you have Putin in Russia that's doing the same thing. So we are now going to have two superpowers over there that are going to be what we could say going back and reverting to older ideologies of the Tsar and of the emperor and of these large kingdoms that were on their own, that didn't have real connections other than trade with the rest of the world. But we're not politically engaged in the rest of the world. We're not effectively in debating or taking part of the rest of the world, but we're having their own secluded areas, Chinese behind the Chinese wall and the Russians behind their different fronts that they had back in the time where the Tsar was in play, different systems running on the what we call powers that be in the top leading position, and no personal freedom and no democracy and no freedom whatsoever. So we're seeing they're reverting to that, which goes with the races that are present there. And then we'll have India that's in between that needs to figure out which leg they're standing on. And that's where the new prime minister might have an effect. It might shift something for the way that India works. Since they are in between, they need to figure out where they belong, including Indonesia and all of these areas in between Australia and Japan, to put it that way, between China and Japan and all of these smaller islands in the southern hemisphere. And they're not smaller, but you know what I'm talking about. All of these little segments that are part of there, including India and all the way up. So we are going to have this division around our world. And how is that going to be affected by the changes in the sun? That is for a time to tell. But what I can say is that our sun is continuing its clean out and close down processes in the radiation field from the 5th dimension outward into the dimension 5. And that is what we are now seeing more and more dark light, because the original fields or shields that were there were in what we call the radiation spectrum that were connected to density 2. These are all gone. So now we only have dark light that is coming from that. That is going to affect us. And then we have the remaining vibrational fields from dimension 1 to 4, and they will change accordingly. They will begin that, as I talk about, continuous burning off process. So what I am responding to now in my molecular state, because my molecules are part of my vibrational field, that is part of my emotional field, that is connected to the proton, that's connected to what we call the water, the hydrogen level of our body, which are then connected to that level of our biofield that is being fueled by the energy of the sun, to put it that way. It is vital that I shift out of that and get either to an earlier configuration of the sun, the cold sun that is not affecting me because I have that internally, or I shift into what we call the density 1 energies of our system so I can transform the energies and repair the damages. And that's the plan. But it doesn't necessarily have to be in the 3rd cycle type of energies, but that's where we have been pushed due to the darkness of the radiation shields of our sun. Unfortunately, that is positioning us back in the 3rd cycle, which has been the plan all along, but the dark ones. But again, we need to be cautious and not just jump on board that idea, because it might be manipulation. We might have a different density 1 configuration in this universal structure. It might be there, but it's hidden behind the dark configuration because of the radiation shields of the sun that is now emitting an LPR3, or what we could call a 3rd cycle type of energies, due to the galactic core and all the infusions of the dark ones we have had since 2007. So we are having this very complex environment where we're trying to figure out what's the right way to do. And we only know by trial and error. We only know by doing it. And the goal is, of course, to be able to perceive what does the energy work do to you. For instance, today when the sun was shining, I had back pain, I had leg pain, I had pain all over my body. And normally I would do the horizontal clearing work, but I was lying there and I got more and more nauseous. I got more and more uncomfortable. And then I just said, no, I can't lie down do energy work. Do I have to sit up do energy work? No, that didn't feel right either. So I had to move. I had to do my dancing. I had to do something in a movement that will connect to the biofield, because you remember from the earlier material that horizontal energy work goes with vibrational field, vertical energy work in sitting in contemplation, meditation and clearing is doing to the mental field. But while you move and while you exercise, that's the biofield. So I had to exercise somehow, not doing the plank and all these kind of things, but do some kind of movement that allowed my body to work on as many levels as possible. And that's where I choose dancing. I was also contemplating, should I go out running? Yeah, not because of the energies. As I said yesterday, I got the fear level. At the same time, I'm also seeing mosquitoes and there are weird spiders and we are getting close to Halloween. So yeah, probably not outside, not more than I have to. So that's not where I want to go with that one. And just 2 weeks ago, I was out running 5 o'clock in the morning in darkness, and that was kind of okay. And now it's just not going out there. So things can shift pretty quickly. So what we understand is that our body has similar radiation fields in the 5th to the 12th dimension of our holographic configuration, although not activated in most humans. And our molecules hold hydrogen among other chemical compounds. So what we understand here is, as you go back to the psyche of energy, where I talk about that people have in a higher level of the 5th dimension, if they have darkness there, then they are going to be quite activated by what's going on in the sun. Now, we're going to see a lot of people that had that configuration of actually being what we call benign in their lower fields up to the 4th dimension. They are having Pleiadian genetics and looking all good and fine. But if they behind that has been reconfigured due to imprisonment earlier in the Orion system, because their genetics are technically part of the Pleiadians that were captured during the Orion Pleiadian Wars, and they've been seated here just waiting for this time, they will now ignite their darkness, and that will override their benevolent features, and they will become what they were trained and changed into. They will now begin to emit it, perhaps not physically as in you will see it by your physical eyes, but you will definitely be affected by it energetically. As I said in some of the earlier videos or podcasts, in 2016 to 20, I was all about the energetic parasites and the shedding, or that was to 2019, and how to avoid the whole contamination kind of thing. And then we had the pandemic. And I've had other training scenarios, including the ones where you have heard me talk about that many, many times. These people that present themselves to be benevolent, but everything in them are emitting some kind of darkness. And I've seen it in some of the crystal children. They have this weird, I call it a hydra, that's in their spine. It's hidden for most, but if you have the ability to see into the 8th dimension, you can see it, and that is a nasty energy sucking thing. I've seen other kids in their teens that look all bright and blue-eyed and blonde-haired or red-haired and blue-eyed or whatever. And they are of the Cro-Magnon lineages. Their energy system is shedding off some kind of dark spores that are literally going in and changing the biofield and turning it into a dark light field. They are not turning dark light. They're still shining. They're crystalline light, but everything else is shedding off because they are part of the crystalline Syrian bees, and their attempt to create a new human that would technically have what's left of the timeline event, but enclosed in a crystalline structure. And that is now sparking to life, and it has to go somewhere because their biofield and their physical form and their lower levels are immune to it. Yes, they succeeded to do so, but it's not immune on the higher level, so the rest of us will then be kicked in the energy field to a lower level because it's shedding off. It's still radiating the effects of the timeline event. So we're going to have these issues. It's going to be, when we were talking about the imprinting of the energy system of others, that was a lot to deal with, but we're now also going to have people that are becoming lethal, energetically speaking, because they're not aware of what they are and what they have in their energy system. So we are in for a bit of a transition on that level as we go into density 1. That's the problem with the density 1 energies. And if it then is imbued with the energies of the moon, then we are twice in trouble. So this is going to be a bit of a challenge, and I'm not having any solutions whatsoever. But my best guess is that one is that, and that could be the reason. There are, again, when I talk about going back into this density 1, if it is imposed onto me as a learning process to deal with these things, will it then reconfigure my biofield to be able to withstand these dark forces, so to speak, so that I will not bend to it, that I will not break under the different shedding or whatever without becoming crystalline, because that's of no use to anyone, because that's the failed experiment, as we know. So again, we are questions to be asked and questions to be answered by doing the work and clearing work and see where it takes me, and then whatever solution that comes up with that one. You have heard in other scenarios as well with the new reality programs, there's a lot of experimentation going on, and very few of these projects are a success. They crash under the burden of the effects of the timeline event, because nobody's been doing anything in this system for so long. Everybody's just been harvesting and creating distortion and entropy, and nobody has maintaining it. And the ones that are supposed to do it have been infected themselves and have been connected to the scavengers and the sex industry and what have you, and are thereby no longer what we call in the state of caretaking of our planet. So we are having that there are problems all the way through and through. And we could say one of the solutions are, of course, if humanity changes their way and do it on a global scale. And we are now having issues with China reverting back to the emperor state, Russia reverting back to the Tsar state, the whole environmental issue, the collapse of the different grids around our planet, etc., etc. So it's going to be challenging for all of us. And in that one, again, if we are on top of that, for those of us who actually could make a change, because we are transitioning into what we could call the higher order sciences, and we need the higher order energy system to do so. But in doing so, we also become vulnerable for the different aspects of imprinting and what have you. You can see that change makers and those of us who are going to do it on the proper level, so to speak, transforming energy, we are definitely in for a challenge that might seem a little bit larger than we are actually capable of. But remember, as you work with energy and as you learn to clear your energy system, if it does hold viable genetic, it will adjust. It will learn to self-heal. It will learn to self-repair with whatever hits you. If you don't have viable genetics, you will not have these problems, because you will never get beyond the fourth dimension. You will never get beyond what we could say the emotional field and into the vibrational field. You might get a slight version of it, but that could just be activation of the regress genetics that you're holding. And then you will follow with the rest of the fourth dimensional races and what they are doing as the last attempt under the old world order to preserve certain levels of their timelines and what they have got left, by in that process targeting those of us who are moving away to keep us stuck there, as it has been going on for so long. And that's one of the reasons why these old world order races will not go beyond their regression spiral, because they are continuing to misuse and abuse other life forms to sustain themselves. And as long as they're doing that, that will only lead to the abyss. They will never ever move beyond that. There needs to be this understanding that to truly get out of the mess of the fourth cycle, you need to complete it, and you need to complete the progression work. You need to clear out the effects of the timeline event, and you need to recreate your vibrational field. And if you can't do that, if you can't go beyond the fourth dimension and lift into either the fifth or the sixth, well, then that's your time. Then that's it. It is what it is. You will go with the rest of the sinking ship and the rats on the ship, and that's how it's going to go. If you want to learn to swim, you have to have the capacity and the strength to do so, to jump off the ship, off the sinking ship, and then swim to land or to shore or somewhere else where you will continue your progression. And to be able to do so, you have to begin with a lot of will, but you also need to have a kind of energy system that is capable of allowing you to continue to swim and not drown in whatever comes your way. So the human vibrational field is connected to the vibrational fields of the sun in density dimension 4 to 1 or 1 to 4 if you like, which are like the code systems behind the human vibrational field. The reason why I say dimension 4 to 1 is because the outer dimension that we are seeing is technically dimension 1 in density 1. And then you have dimension 1, 2, and 3. These are the molecular state that we have of the sun. Dimension 4 is the level science don't know of. And that's why I put it in that order, not the other way around. And when you look at the sun, you have to go from the 15th dimension in the core and then outwardly, where you understand, and you know that from the whole philosophy book, that the outer domain is the outer dimensions, and everything else is inside on a more subtle level, as in a Chinese doll, where you pull off the layers and the outer layer is dimension 1 of this reality, and the inner layers are the highest dimensions. So that's the same kind of thing. So as the vibrational fields of the sun will shift, so will our vibrational field as well. That's why I want to shed off my vibrational field as it is. I want to get rid of that stupid emotional field. And I am so tired of the remaining fourth cycle scavengers, perverted, whatever, that got inserted into my energy system when I was in Australia, still lingering on, still coming back from time to time, no matter how many fucking time I clear it out. There's still something I'm not seeing. There's still something they can get in contact with. There are still people they can use to send these kind of code systems my way, which is so annoying, but it is what it is. And this is part of the challenge as well. If I were to, in any ways or forms, avoid anything to a large degree, I would have to go out on an island on my own. But we know that's not possible. That's not the world we have. I don't have the funds for it. This is just not the solution, because this is not how it is. But sometimes, you know, when you get tired of things, you just kind of, yeah, fuck you. And you just want to do something else, right? Because it's annoying. It's annoying that month after month after month after month, I'm free of it for 3 weeks of a time. And then 1 week, I'm just hit by it. And it's just, I fucking hate it, to put it that way. And it pisses me off every single time, even more so, because I'm clearing it. I'm doing all the things that I'm supposed to do, all the things I teach. I'm doing that and more so, and it still comes back. So what am I missing? Another question to be asked. And I'm saying this so you understand that even though I say this is what you need to do, you need to understand that it keeps coming back every fucking month, because we have 12 months of each 4 weeks, and these are connected to 12 different systems that play different timelines of the same ridiculous story about our system. Of course it is that way. So it crosses over, as we know from the original Pillar project, where you had Pillar 1 to 7, and then you had Pillar 2 to 8, and you'll understand, well, the level 1 on Pillar 1 to 7 is the only place where that is. And but you have on level 2, on Pillar 1 to 7, you have number 2, you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 7. On Pillar 2 to 8, you have 2, 3, 4, 5, 7, 8, and etc. And then you'll understand how it repeats itself. So yes, you might dodge it in one constellation, you might get it in one version, but it will come back next month, and then will come back next year, because next year is another number, next year is another sequence, and then will play out itself again, but in another variation and in another configuration. It is fucking annoying. It was a good thing to begin with to keep learning stuff you hadn't learned, and I could definitely look at it that way. But if it were some positive thing, then you say, yeah, that's nice, recountering that again, and oh yeah, remember that one, and then amplify your energy system. But here in this false system, that is doing the opposite. You are crawling up and then it comes back and kick you in the butt and draw you down month after month, year after year, doing the same stupid things over and over again until it is completely out of that configuration and you move into a new type of configuration. For instance, in the whole 2010s, between 2011 and 2019, there was a specific type of entities that kept reappearing. But now we are in 2020, 2021, etc. So we are in a lot of number twos, and that's a different version of the same species. So at least the version that was between 2010 and 2019 are no longer there. But now I'm dealing with the version of them in the number twos and the 20s as we're going into that one. And then we're going to 2030, we'll have another version of them due to the original pillar configurations and the versions of them that were there. As we are developing, as we are dealing with the same levels of who and what we are, the difference is we are clearing our fields. They are not. They are using all of these versions of themselves to get energy, where we are clearing out ours to preserve energy and upgrade by whatever we've got left of viability. So that's the difference. So the whole shift in the sun and the energies of the sun is the reason why we have always been affected in a positive manner by the sun. When it was giving energy, we got mentally kind of lifted up by the sun, and also in terms of human health and immune systems, not only by as a source of what ignites the creation of melatonin and D vitamin in our skin, etc., but as an actual energetic provider, which we know from the Hindu terminology and the guru teachings of prana, which is sun energy, sun rays that are activating the prana triangle, and by that are fueling our vibrational field. So as the composition of the sun is changing in terms of the higher order configuration, the properties of its hydrogen and helium components are going to change as well. Not visibly for most, of course, but in terms of code systems and functionality within the range of the original density energies. And that will affect our vibrational field configuration at some point as well. And I think I covered the basis of that one and the understandings of that one. So when we are here on page 3, I put in the lower energy system and its processes just to remind you from the transition science classes where I explain this configuration and what all of that is. So you kind of understand that the emotional field processes, which are mostly played in technology, are what we call the code layers, the subtle energy processes, the nervous system sensations, the electrochemical processes, glands and cells. So all of that is going to be affected. And that's why when I talk about the sun is shining, I feel physically painful. It feels painful physically, sorry about that, because my molecules are responding. My molecules are struggling with the dark radiation that's coming in. My physical form is responding to it. And I'm pretty sure the people that are not aware of this, that doesn't understand this, they might say, oh yeah, I got a headache of the autumn sun, which we know many of us are doing because it's shifting position and our neural network has to adjust to it. And that creates this kind of, the blood responds in a different way. The blood cells respond in a different way. The limbic system responds in a different way due to the lack of the energy of the prana triangle. So we are normally having effects of that. We also have less energy during winter time. We get, it's easier for us to get sick, etc. So all of this is because the sun is not fueling the vibrational field to produce what we need to keep it, what we could say, in a higher energetic state. All the energies are not there, so therefore we have less. And now with the sun that is burning out and has no energy giving anymore, then it's going to be even worse during winter time, where we will now be more hit by the effect of the energies of the moon and the effects of our planet and the effects of the stargates, which is why I'm going to look into that later on. And that ties back to the transition science classes on the rotundum and nutrition, to put it there, because then we need to look into what are we then giving ourselves of food, what kind of food can we amp up energetically to a high vibrational state, what can we do to create a high vibrational state in our home. Are we going to have more crystals to, as they did during the times of Atlantis, to keep up the light emission of our own field, so we fuel the crystals, the crystal fuels us, but the crystals are connected to the planetary grid. So if they have been contaminated, are you capable of clearing the crystals, as we talked about? So we need to find solutions. And this is part of the change-making material, where you go in and find solutions for yourself. This is not for trade. You're not beginning to trade the ideas of crystals and what have you, because that will for sure be shut down by the dark faction. So that's for you and you alone, and you're fueling the crystals with your energy. So it's not a project to be sold, a product to be sold, nor technically when whatever type of food you're working with. I know I talked about the nutrition, and I might do a course material on that one, but it is individual what works for you and what doesn't work for you, what your energy system needs, what your biofield is made of, will determine what kind of foods that works for you, what kind of vegetables and fruit that are in alignment with your energy system, what you will respond correctly with, what you can amplify so it feedbacks to you in a positive, higher order manner. So the first step is, of course, the correct clearing work, and thus builds upon the understanding of how to work with energy and how to transform the holographic code systems behind all life forms and all systems of energy and all the systems of reality. To move beyond this reality, the correct science of how we are constructed energetically, as well as how we change our energy system configuration and vibrate our consciousness unit into a higher order density configuration as part of the higher order sciences needed to align energetically and consciously with the future realities and their worlds beyond our current system. So here I talked about we are going to the 2025 timeline in the future, but I am now stepping back in time. Again, I said this could just be a manipulation, and I'll clear myself and then I'll make it as a jumping board. I will use that clearing to understand, okay, then what are our planetary density 1 configuration? What is this universal structure density 1 configuration? Again, as I said, sometimes the dark ones pretend that they are our grandmasters of teaching what we need to know, and sometimes they do that. But of course, they have what we call a self-interest in it. So either way, it's I'm going with the flow. I'm dealing what I need to deal with. I'm dealing with it. So I'll either discover that I have got myself into a new mess and a new entanglement, and then I have to clear myself out of it, or I will learn by the process, or it will show that actually the original planetary configuration density 1 is similar to the one that was in Andromeda. There's a reason why I got exiled there. So again, questions to be asked, and this is where, when we talk about knowing who you are and remembering past lives and versions of yourself, there's always a reason why we have been where we have been. Our specific configuration, our specific type of genetics has always and will always align itself where we have energetic and genetic affinity. We have traveled certain paths within the universal cycles. It's not that we have randomly been all over the place. We can change ourselves to go ways where we normally don't really belong, as I talked about in other material. Then we go as diplomats, we are visiting. But if we are living somewhere, aligning ourselves with that reality field, it's because it's in our trajectory, our lineage, and the pillars that we chose to be part of. And there we work through the entire pillar of whatever system we were in. Andromeda had their pillar project as well. They just had it in a different type of configuration. So there are reasons there. It could also be one of the mother programs trying to ignite me to remember some sciences that is lost on this planet. So therefore, the only way she can give me that information is to push me into an artificial remembering of something of the Andromedan system, where I then can get something that is similar to what I need to work with. And then she can show me this is how it should be on this planet, but this is now dismantled. So how do you deal with this? Again, questions to be asked, and therefore it needs to be worked with. So with that one, I'm not going to end this podcast here, but I will do a little wrap up in the next one, and then we will finish off the course material in the next video. Thank you.